Hello, Blue Jays fans. Welcome to episode 248 of the Jays from the Couch radio podcast brought to you by jaysfromthecouch.com. We're coming at you live on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, streaming our podcast live every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you for tuning in for another week. And of course, if you miss the live streaming, you can always catch it on our YouTube channel. Just look for Jays from the Couch, give us a subscribe and all that fun stuff. But the audio version also available on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, and I could list them all. But basically, anywhere you find a podcast, you will find the Jays from the Couch podcast. And if you don't, find another user because clearly they don't know what they're doing. Welcome back for another week. I'm your host, as always, Sean Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. We've got a great show for you this week. I'll be joined by the feckless wonder, Steve Feck, and our newest contributor, Jason Mcdonald, will join us for a nice little debut on our podcast as well. We're going to talk about the Blue Jays roster as it heads into spring training, and we'll also discuss when would be the right time for the Toronto Blue Jays to pull off a big trade, because apparently it was not this winter. But we'll dive into all of that, and to help me do it, the host of the On Feck Circle every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, the feckless wonder, Steve Feck. Good evening to you.
Sean, how the hell are you?
I'm great. How about yourself, bud?
It couldn't be better. I'm just so overjoyed at what Ross Atkins has done this offseason. I can barely contain myself. Well,
this episode of the Jays from the Couch podcast brought to you by sarcasm, apparently. Now, Steve, I have to ask you before we bring the new guy in here. He's chilling in the green room with the open bar. Are you ready for this? We're going to break him in, and we have to do it gently.
Oh, absolutely. I have no reason to believe that he will not stay true to what baseball should be and not what the front office's vision or blurred vision of what baseball is. So I'm looking forward to this.
And I have no idea what that means in relation to somebody's first appearance on a podcast, but I'm with you. I hope for the same thing. I hope it goes well. I'm sure it will. I'm very excited.
He's one of us. He's with us.
He's one of us.
Yes.
Oh, that poor guy. You're going to send him running and screaming. Let's get him in here before he leaves. Making his Jays from the Couch podcast debut, Jason Mcdonald. How are you, bud?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. I'm glad you could make it.
Well, I'll say without sarcasm that I am overjoyed and excited about what Ross Atkins in the front office has done this off season, and I'll be really happy to debate it out, I think, with Feck and some of the others. So happy to be here.
Well, let's start there then. We're heading into spring training here, and we saw images of the truck leaving, and everybody gets all excited, and like you're able to watch a game. Come on. However, spring training starting. They announced their non-roster invitees, some interesting names there, but I guess it might make logical sense. We're coming at our audience live on Valentine's Day. Honey, thank you for allowing that to happen. But what is it that you love? And Jason, I might as well start with you since you teed it up for me so nicely. What is it that you like about or love about this off season?
I think what I like about it is it's a continuation of what they said they would do 3 or 4 years ago. They would build from within. They would stop the farm system. Now it's rated consistently 3 or 4 in all baseball. They're loaded that way. They needed maybe 2 more pitchers, but at least positions wise, they're loaded. Then they said they'd add talent when it was right. Last year they added Ryu to an $80 million contract, and of course this year it was Stramer in center field for what was it, $150 million. And I don't consider those win now moves. Those moves are just continuing adding talent in a different manner. You can add it through the farm system. You can add it through international free agency. And these were some moves they did to add talent for the long term. They also did some short-term things. Marcus Simeon, $18 million. That's what a big market does for 1 year when they have a hole at second base or third base. I like him better at third. I probably like him better at short, but I understand why he's not there. And then, adding a few of the pitchers. I think they probably would love to get another stud pitcher in there, but I think they're waiting, and maybe we'll get to that later for the best opportunity to do it. So I think they're true to their word of what they said they were going to do, and I'm excited to continue watch the rise of the Blue Jays. And I don't think it's all or nothing this year. I think it's another step forward. So I'm really excited about it.
That's fair enough. It's almost sounds like I'm listening to Karen talk, the positivity oozing out of everything you just said. And our audience will have to forgive it, but Jason, if you've got a pair of headphones or earbuds on you around there somewhere, fire those in there because we're getting some echo, or earplugs, because I'm going to throw it over to Steve here. And earplugs may be more appropriate, but Steve, I kid because I love. Now, Steve, Jason loves the off season. You threw it out there that you did not, and it's just like Valentine's Day. There are people who love it, and there are people who tend to want to just hide away from it all until it blows over. So I assume if we were to apply that logic here to the Blue Jays off season, you are kind of, how do I say this, not in love with this offseason. And I wonder if you could explain that for all of our listeners at home, because those listeners at home are probably more on the side of Jason here with regard to that.
Well, okay, I'll tell you what. It's Valentine's Day. I have some love in my heart. Not a lot, but there's some. I'm not sure I love the offseason, but there's something about the Blue Jays I love. I think Springer is a generational signing for the Blue Jays. Okay, I don't have problems with them going 5 and 6 years. Now, mind you, he kind of fell in Ross Atkins' lap, so he could have tried to play hardball and maybe scared him back to Houston. But Springer, they did what they needed to do to lock him up. That's great. I love the Yates signing. I love the Tyler Chatwood signing. However, now again, I have not seen the Blue Jays trucks packed up and heading down to Dunedin on any of the feeds I've been watching here in the States, but I do not believe that a third baseman or a number 2 starter was packed in those trucks unless you guys caught something that I didn't see. At this point, if a ball is hit to third base, does it make a sound? What happens? Okay, it's just, Marcus Simeon, you spent 18 large on Marcus Simeon, who is a shortstop at best, really has never been a second baseman, certainly has not been a third baseman, so we're going to disrupt the infield so that Ross Atkins, rodeo clown, hello, hey, look at what I did, can make a big signing, a big splash. And we did what we said. We were going to make an impact signing. Well, you should have made an impact signing for third base or an impact signing at the front of your rotation. But you take the good with the bad. And I really hope that I'm wrong. I truly hope that all the hate that most of the listeners have for me turns out to be true, and that I'm an idiot and that I shouldn't be ranting and raving the way I am. But I don't think I am.
Well, and I don't think you are either. I too, if I don't hate the Simeon signing, I really don't, because if you follow even the Dodgers are doing the same thing, just load up on talent and figure out where they're going to play later. It would make me feel a whole lot better though if there was some kind of impact starter added to that rotation, right? And that's not to say that their rotation is poor. It's okay. It's enough for their offense to, win a whole bunch of games. And if they have to do it, 7-8 or 8-7 and 6-5 and 9-7, then so be it. A win is a win, right? And that's really all you need to do. But at some point, the rotation is going to matter. And whether they kind of play the opener strategy or the short starts or however they want to do it, and I know, Feck, where you stand on that, but at some point, the rotation is going to be an issue. And we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show as far as how they can address that, because once, the season starts, really, it's trade season. right? Because there aren't going to be that many free agents out there, particularly starting pitching, but there wasn't that many to begin with anyway, not of quality, right? So there we are. It's going to have to be via trade, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And maybe to get us started here, I'm going to throw this question from Karen. Karen, who is not on the show this week, but is watching at home, taking notes for her Sunny Side of the Dome episode on Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern time here on our Jays from the Couch YouTube channel. She's got an interesting question for us. So Karen says, who among these young starting pitcher candidates do each of you think most likely to have a breakout season in 2021? And here they are: Anthony Kay, Thomas Hatch, Julian Merriweather, Trent Thornton, or TJ Zoik. And I think Karen's question is an excellent one because of everything we just said. The rotation is in such a state that one of these guys may need to have a breakout, whether it's through injury or just winning a job outright in spring training over, what's his name there, Tanner Roark, maybe. One of these guys is going to play a role, maybe even a significant one. So Jason, I'll start with you. Which of this group do you feel is going to have that breakout season?
I'm glad you started with me. First of all, can you hear with me with the mic now?
Perfectly. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Because I had in my notes before the show that I wanted to mention this, and I believe that would be Julian Merriweather. And the reason I say that is he's of the age now where, he's 27, 28 years old. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. But his fastball, he throws in the very high 90s. And his changeup, he throws in the very low 80s. The last person I remember with a spread that much was named Pedro Martinez. And if he can figure out how to stay healthy, because that's been his problem, he's always been high on that, the Cleveland prospect list. And of course, the Blue Jays got him in the trade for Josh Donaldson, which I think a lot of people are really going to appreciate that trade a lot more now. But if he can stay healthy and harness that changeup and be able to control the fastball, I think he could have a huge breakout. How many innings he can pitch this year, I don't know. But for when he pitches, I think he's going to do very, very well.
Right. And maybe, that could be one of the guys that if he is in the rotation or even in, he makes the pitching staff in one way or another, could be part of that opener or whatever you want to call it, piggyback start kind of thing, to ease him in and to protect him. So Steve, of that group, who's your breakout guy?
None of them as far as being in the rotation, but I agree with Jason that Merriweather is going to be the breakout guy, and I think he's going to be used in leverage situations out of the bullpen. He, as Jason pointed out, he's got the stuff. He throws hard. He seems to have the makeup where he could walk into situations like that. And I'm not saying he's going to close. I mean, potentially, I guess he could. But I think he's going to be like an Andrew Miller type-ish Jake McGee kind of guy that you bring in the fifth or sixth inning to get key outs and then bridge that over to Chatwood and Yates and Romano. So I would say Merriweather, but I don't think any of those guys are going to make any kind of significant impact in the rotation.
Really? Now that's interesting because you've got Nate Pearson, who again is probably going to be, I was going to say babied. I'll use the term monitored instead.
How about mishandled?
Well, potentially, right? So you got Pearson, you've got Ryu, who, let's be real, short season last year, so health wasn't necessarily a factor, but it has to be a consideration. And so the rotation does have potential for one of these guys to slide in there. And you look at Trent Thornton and Anthony Kay, I think they are what they are at this point. Serviceable. In case of an injury, I don't know that you rely on them to fill a rotation spot for an entire season unless you absolutely have to, or are the Pittsburgh Pirates or Baltimore Orioles. That being said, TJ Zoik is very interesting to me. I would like to see more from him. I know in the past that injuries have been an issue for him. So I would like to see more from him because there was a point where I was like really excited for him to join that rotation. But Merriweather is an interesting case only because of, and Jason's point about that massive gap between his fastball and his changeup. But we often think about this idea of pitchers as they're either a starter or they failed as a starter, and now they're a bullpen piece, right? And Feck, you mentioned Andrew Miller, who kind of made, being a reliever sexy, right? You know what I mean? Like before it was just, well, if you can't start, we'll put you in the bullpen and whatever. But I don't know if I agree with none of these guys will make an impact on the rotation. So, Steve, do you mean, when you say that, do you mean that they're not going to be a breakout in the rotation, or they're not going to be a long-term rotation piece? Like, I guess, how do you figure they're not going to play into the rotation?
Well, I think that each of them has room for development. I'd like to see Zoik start at AAA. I wouldn't mind seeing all those guys except for Merriweather start at AAA. Now, that's not realistic. I think Kay is going to probably make the roster. But you mentioned my hometown team, the team that I root for in the National League. They're going to have 5 starters. They're not going to be good starters, but they're going to have 5 starters. So in essence, if you're just saying, well, okay, they're going to fill a rotation hole or they're going to be an opener, that's not making an impact on a rotation. Okay, that's taking talent and forcing them into a model that really they haven't been developed to fit, nor is it really a smart model. I mean, again, it's just, my opinion. I think that, the Atkins inning diet is just a disaster waiting to happen for the development of this young staff. So, I am concerned, that they haven't added 1, if not 2 starters. I'm very, very concerned.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So before I get into the Atkins inning diet, Bob Ritchie's watching on our YouTube channel, and he wants to know in what grade did Ross Atkins steal Feck's lunch money? Because I guess it's why the hate for Ross Atkins, right?
Do you really want me to go there?
That might be an episode for the On-Feck Circle.
Yeah, but basically, okay, I have gone to and witnessed and watched and listened to enough Cleveland Indian games over the last 35 or 40 years to know what the mindset is of, the Shapiro tree of general managers. I think Atkins, he deserves credit for the building of the farm system. Ben Cherington deserves more, but, Atkins deserves credit, and I have tipped my hat to him about that. I don't think he has the wherewithal, or as I said last week with Kamikaze Tanaka, he doesn't have the marbles to make a big deal or get off of we have all these great, prospects and we developed them and we know what they can do. So we can't trade them. He just doesn't have the wherewithal. He has a finger. It's not a trigger finger. I'm not sure where the finger's going. I don't know what he's doing, but he is not the kind of general manager that's going to take this team to the next level. He just flat out doesn't have the wherewithal or the confidence, I would even say. Okay, he is Neil Huntington light. Okay, he's not as stupid as Neil Huntington was, but he's getting there.
Well, now see, listening to you talk, all right, and he may have a finger for you after that. However, I don't know, Steve. If this were maybe a year and a half ago, maybe I would agree with you, that they're trying to be smart and make all the smart moves instead of the flashy moves that fans really, can sink their teeth into. But if you look at last year with the signing of Ryu and this offseason, they have and previously when I've spoken to Mark Shapiro, he talked about this idea of taking on risk, right? There was a time where they just can't do that, especially after the playoff decline, right? But now they are starting to take on risk in Ryu. Spending $150 million on George Springer is a risk that they would not have taken previously. $18 million on Marcus Simeon, who they didn't really need, right? That's risk, right?
No, that's stupid. That's not risk. That's stupid. They had $18 million. They could have signed an Andrelton Simmons. They could have signed a Freddie Galvis, and they could have used the money to fill the needs that they really needed to address. Springer fell in their lap. If Atkins had pulled off a Real Muto signing, which I didn't want him to do, or a LeMahieu signing, I would have been impressed. Even a Bauer signing, though a lot of us didn't really want Bauer here. Springer fell in his lap. Now, he did make a good decision, making sure that he couldn't escape and give him that 6th year, but he fell in his lap. No one else was going to give Springer that contract the minute the Mets acquired Francisco Lindor. So I am not going to sit here and have a parade for Ross Atkins. I refuse. I mean, he has spit the bit.
Now that's interesting because I don't think that George Springer fell in their lap. They gave him enough to get him to sign, right?
Who else was going to sign him? No one. He would have gone back to Houston on a 1 or 2 year deal, maybe. No one else was going to sign him. Not even the Dodgers were going to pay Springer that money. Once the Mets dropped out of the bidding and the Red Sox weren't going to do it and they went a different direction with the outfitters they have, he had no other options. But Atkins was smart by giving him that extra year, and I will give him that. But it's not like Ross Atkins pulled off the miracle of all miracles, and he didn't get Joe Carter and Robbie Alomar here. Okay, he had a player that no one else was going to sign, and he took advantage of it. Good for him, but I'm not giving him credit for that.
Well, and Kevin, also watching on our YouTube channel, says that he thinks the Nationals could have signed him. And you know what? Somebody would have. I really believe that somebody would have. And, maybe he fell in their lap. George Springer fell in the lap of the Toronto Blue Jays because they took on that risk of an extra year. I'm not saying it's a risk to sign George Springer for the 2021 season. I'm talking about that 6th year of his contract where you're paying him a ton of money to be Randall Grichuk, maybe. You know what I mean? Like that, to me, that's where the risk lies. But again, that wasn't something that they would have done 18 months ago. But Jason, I want to get you to jump in here. The new guy's just sitting politely. He's nodding along. Oh yeah. But so Jason,
this is how you build a following, Jason. You just let me rant, and then no matter what you say, you can speak a different language. It's going to be brilliant. So smart move.
Yeah. Whether or not Springer fell in Atkins' lap or not, it doesn't matter. He had the money, and he closed the contract. And it's not always just about the money. These days, I forget who I was reading today, but when you have to woo the free agent, you have to convince them to come to your city, to your organization, to your manager, to your stadium, to your country. In this case, he got it done. I don't care if he fell into their lap. Now we have him. Marcus Simeon, I love the signing. I don't love him at second base. But in order to sign him, they had to give him second base. That was his request. And one of my hot takes, I have another one, so I'll share this one. I think Marcus Simeon is going to play more third base and shortstop than he will at second, because he's a stand-up guy. He is a clubhouse leader. He's a team leader. He's going to realize that he's better for this team, not backing up, but giving Bo Bichette the odd day off and playing short. Letting Biggio, back as you say, have a home at second, and he's going to play third. I think Atkins, in his brilliance, that might be going too far, is just going to let Marcus realize that on his own. And he's going to commit, and he's going to say, listen, give Biggio second, I'll take third. And if that happens, I really truly believe that, offensively, he's going to be very, very good. And I think if you can play short on a I was going to say World Series winner, that's not true. On a playoff team in Oakland, you can probably play third base after a month or two of learning on the fly. So I like it. The other thing about Ross Atkins and company, because it's not all Ross Atkins in a maybe back when it was Gord Ash, he was a one-man show, but it's not a one-man show anymore. He hasn't had the need, the opportunity, or the timing yet to spend that prospect capital on the big trade. Now, ask me in 2 or 3 months when we're in first or second place and we need to start the second, because I don't think there's anybody on this team that I want starting game 2 of a playoff series. Maybe Nate Pearson, but Nate Pearson has 20 major league innings. He has 150 professional innings. 150 professional innings. This is talking about my age a little bit, but I remember a time where if they didn't have 1,000 minor league innings, people were worried that they weren't fully developed pitchers. Now he has 150. So anointing him number 2 starter, I don't want to do that. But I hope that Ross Atkins and company will pull the trigger. And I don't like to see the Jordan Groshans and some of these other up and coming players be traded. But I hope they will do it when they have to do it.
Right, and I think that. I lost my thought there, but then we're kind of eating away at our time here. We were going to look at the roster, but I think it might be a good time to go ahead and dive into Jason. You wrote an interesting piece at JFtC about when is the right time for this Blue Jays team to pull off a big trade, because let's be real, there were potential trade targets out there. Right, Colorado has German Marquez, Luis Castillo in Cincinnati, and so on and so on. There were targets out there, but the cost to pull those guys away from their teams would have been doable. Yes, the Blue Jays absolutely could have done it. Should they have? That's up for debate. Whatever, I guess, side of that debate you're on, doesn't matter. The haul would have significantly impacted their farm system, and I think, Jason, you said it earlier that they're the number 3 system in all of baseball, except for some whatever, like this ESPN, whoever the hell they are. Yeah, 11th. Like, come on. But their system would have resembled that 11 had they pulled off this deal, right? And then you've got your starter, but that wave of talent that's coming up that they, so it depends on which side of that you're on, right? Are prospects only for trades? Are they only to rebuild your system and come up and take a job at the major league level? Is it a mixture of both? This season, I think it's that they're more valuable to the Blue Jays in-house than any target they could have brought in, rightly or wrongly, because I know that makes your blood boil. But I think that's where we are this winter. Next winter, that may change. And it may even change sooner than that, because Jason, your piece at Jays from the Couch, why don't I throw it to you, Jason, and you can kind of summarize that a little bit here and kind of present the conclusion.
Sure. So I have to preface this by saying that I don't think that the Blue Jays are in the win now mode or we're all going to jump off the CN Tower, right? We're still on the build up. We have multiple years of contention ahead of us if things go well. So, 3 years from now or 2 years from now, maybe spring training is the time or the off season is the time to spend that prospect capital. But right now, especially because there was no minor league games last year, to wait 2 or 3 months and let the minor league players play and let the Blue Jays decide who they really want to keep, who's untouchable, and who they're willing to trade. I think that'd be very valuable, because some of these guys, they're 17 to 20 years old. They put on 20 pounds of muscle, or they lost 20 pounds of unwanted weight. They're still changing physically, and a lot can happen in Well, now it's 18 months since they last played a ball game. So I think that's really important. The other thing is this team's still so young that are we 100% sure that Bo Bichette can play defense at shortstop? Are we 100% sure that Vlad can play defense anywhere? I love Vlad. I think he can, right? But, Nate Pearson, can he be a number 2 starter? He has 20 major league innings. Teoscar Hernandez, he had a great 60 games, but everything last year was only 60 games. I know that he had a great second half of the year before, so hopefully he's, Jose Bautista number 2, and he'll keep it going. But we don't know where our needs are yet, and we don't know where the injuries are going to happen. So wait some of that out, knowing that your bullets are loaded in the gun. We can all name, anybody watching this podcast can name 10 Blue Jay starting pitchers. As Feck would say, they're not all quality or they're not all fully developed. They're minor leaguers that really should stay in the minors until they prove that they push their, I think it was Alex Anthopoulos said he wants his minor leaguers to bust into the major leagues, not be dragged up. Hoping they're good enough, right? He wants them to be fully developed when they get there. So,
but he only said that because he wanted to trade them for every chance he got. Every couple of years, Alex Anthopoulos was bringing out the truckload of prospects and getting rid of them.
Yeah. And you know what? That gave us 2015 and 16, right? And name one prospect that we missed that he traded.
Noah Syndergaard.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. But even Noah, how many did he have? Two full seasons?
Yeah.
I don't regret that trade. I regret the second baseman we traded for Esteban Loaiza when we didn't have a chance of making the playoffs.
Michael Young,
he 200 hits a season forever. But so I think we have to wait a little bit, see what prospects that we're just not going to trade, and see where our weaknesses are so we can fill the hole. But also, as one of our colleagues said, Cincinnati, Cleveland, a few of these other teams are just going to fall so far out of the race, possibly, or teams that maybe expect to be in the race are going to fall out of the race. A lot of these teams are not going to have any revenue, and they're going to want to shed the salary, and the Jays can take on that salary. They can identify the players and make the surgical cut, if you will, and in about 2 or 3 months. It doesn't have to be right at the deadline, but give it a couple months for all the reasons I said. And the one reason I think that I would say that they should do it now is because we all love a blockbuster trade. I wish we had a blockbuster trade in baseball every day of the week. That's my favorite part of baseball, I think, is the trades. So, I'd love to see it happen, but I think we should wait for a couple months, and I'll hand it back to you guys.
So I think that, listening to you talk, I wonder, is it a couple months? Is it 3 months? Or I wonder, and Steve, I'm sure you'll have an opinion on this. I wonder if Ross Atkins really will run out the clock and wait as long as possible to try and get the best deal he can, or wait until somebody panics, or whatever the psychology is behind it. Part of me thinks that he's going to wait and wait and wait. So Steve, I'll throw it to you, because Jason's saying, let's wait a few months at least, maybe even the deadline, and then, maybe add a piece or two. What are your thoughts, Steve?
What? Let's wait to 2022. Wait a minute, no, 2023. Let's keep waiting until we can make up our mind. If Ross Atkins and his staff doesn't know the guys that they want to trade or that could be traded, then they shouldn't be in the front office. Okay, they can go work for ESPN and report on farm systems, okay? Get out of the front office, because you're not going to do anything. All you're doing is taking up space. Get out of the front office and then actually contribute something if you can going forward. I'm sorry. It's the Blue Jays we talked about Springer being a once-in-a-generation signing. They had a once-in-a-decade opportunity to exploit the market, exert their muscle, in the market, spend their money, make the trades when players were still available. Okay, yeah, you can talk about Marquez or Castillo or Zach Plesac, but there were actually pitchers that were actually traded. Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, Lance Lynn. These were all guys that actually got traded by real major league general managers. So if they could have been traded, Ross could have made the move. But again, I'm sorry, guys. He has an arrogance. He thinks, and this is what they fell victim to in Cleveland when Cleveland totally squandered a great young farm system back in the 2000s. They think their prospects are better than everybody else. They're only going to get the premium price they want. And if they don't get it, they're going to just basically hold their breath, stamp their feet, and say, sorry, we're not going to make a trade. And then we're going to be sitting here having this same podcast in another 3 or 4 years when there's a new general manager in there. And when they finally bring in Casey Candel to manage the Blue Jays, we actually have a good management staff. We're going to have the same podcast then.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation because you can see all sides of it. You know, the flags fly forever, just do it. This is a good time to do it, right? Like, realistically speaking, the Yankees and the Rays are beatable within the context of the division standings. And I just think there's that side of it, but then there's also the side that I'm sure Ross Atkins is on, with the overthinking and the analytical approach to making a trade and all of that stuff. You're not going to win every trade, but I'm sure he would like to try, right? So, and of course that's the goal anyway. But before we get into our hot takes, we'll just throw a couple of comments up here. Bob Ritchie, again, on average, teams use approximately 12 starters during the season. Depth is important. Jason's article regarding waiting until the midseason to add a number 2 makes sense. Use your depth, then add when the impact is meaningful. Can't argue with that.
Yes, you can.
I knew it. That's why I paused.
What depth do we have? We have a bunch of AAA starters other than Ryu and Pearson and Roark. We have all AAA starters. So we have great depth at AAA. Hey, Ross, we're not playing in Buffalo this year, okay? The AAA team's playing in Buffalo this year. Let's get some pitchers in Toronto or Dunedin or wherever else we're going to end up playing. Get them there. Get them here now. You need 12 pitchers? Great. You need to have 12 good pitchers, not people you're going to rush to make up for the fact that you didn't have the guts to pull the trigger and getting a starter here.
Perhaps I'm not. Yep. Kevin, watching.
I'm so sorry, Jason.
I'm loving this. I'm having the time of my life.
Kevin, watching on YouTube, I think the Blue Jays should trade Groshans just to get another legitimate starter behind Ryu. And then he follows that up with all Groshans brings to the team is power. This might be a guy, as Jason referred to earlier, that they really want to get a look at and see how he has developed before they make a final decision on whether or not he is going to be that third baseman that they need. Who knows? And Karen, as well, is it likely to be more of a buyer's or seller's market at the 2021 trade deadline? That's an excellent question. Very quickly, no justification. I'm going to throw it to each of you because I still want to get to your hot takes, and we're running out of time. So, Jason, I'll ask you first. Is it a buyer's or seller's market at this coming trade deadline in July?
Buyers.
And Feck?
Seller.
Interesting. So I guess I'll break the tie. I really think that I don't know anymore because I'm thinking if how many teams are actually going to be in that race, and I think that the number isn't as large as we might think it is, right? So yeah.
How many teams can take on salary?
There's that.
How many teams are desperate to get rid of salary when there's no fans in the stands?
There's also that too. Yep. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So let's get to these hot takes. Jason, because you're making your first podcast appearance, I will give you the choice. Would you like to go first or would you like to defer?
You let me go first before, so I'll defer.
All right.
Or I'll let Fact make the decision. How's that one?
Well, see, Feck has. I've been told that his hot take is the hottest of takes. So
Correct.
Okay, so
I'm shocked I thought of it, but it's okay.
So I think I want to leave it for the end. So all right, so I'll go. So the Toronto Blue Jays will get over 100 innings from Tyler Chatwood, from Ross Stripling, and Trent Thornton. Those three guys over 100 innings, whether it comes through the opener or the piggyback or through injury, those three guys are going to collect significant innings in the 2021 season. Good or bad, don't know. If it's really all three of them, probably not a good thing because something has gone wrong. But there it is. All right, Jason, you're up.
My hot take is for my very first one. First of all, I believe I have to be bold in this because no one remembers if you're wrong. But if I'm right, I want everyone to remember. I'm going to rewind this. Right? Robbie Ray will be the most valuable Blue Jays pitcher by the end of the season. When we're sitting here 7 months from now, he's going to be our vote for most valuable Blue Jays pitcher.
Wow. So Robbie Ray, is he going to do that while walking the entire American League, or
he's not going to walk the league? Walker's going to fix him. Back in 17, 18, he wasn't walking anybody, and he was an all-star. He's young. He's strong. Part of that is, I believe, his injury potential is probably less than Ryu. Ryu, I think, is going to be amazing. He has been for 5 years or so, but the injury potential is there. But I think, maybe I hope more than I think, that Robbie Ray is going to put it all together. His lefties pull together when they're a little bit older. His fastball is elite. His slider's elite. They're really the only two he has. But that's my hot take. He's going to be our most valuable pitcher.
All right. Feck, that was a pretty good hot take.
That is awesome as a debut. Yeah,
right.
You got to love that. You got to love that.
So now it's your turn. Here we go.
I'm actually going to take a point that Jason brought up earlier about Marcus Simeon and third base. Marcus Simeon is going to play a role in the Blue Jays third base picture, but that's because he's going to be traded back to the Oakland A's for Matt Chapman.
Wow.
Because both players, Simeon's going to suck at second base and be disappointing at the bat. Matt Chapman, that hip surgery he had, he's going to struggle out of the bat, and the A's are already kind of itchy about wanting to move his contract, which will only increase as it goes forward. So Marcus Simeon will be traded back to the A's where he's beloved, and all his teammates are pissed for Matt Chapman. And we'll actually have a third baseman.
Now, I assume, fact, that you're not suggesting 1-for-1. You can't be.
Well, no, because the Oakland A's actually have a front office that's smart, so that we're going to have to kick in a prospect. Okay, but I mean, if Chapman is hobbled with the hip, and you are worried about arbitration and contracts down the road, maybe you do.
Wow, I would love that personally. I love me some Matt Chapman. And if they could turn a year of Simeon into Matt Chapman, okay, all right, then maybe that wasn't $18 million wasted. That's very interesting, Steve. Now you got me thinking.
That's only the $12 million they paid him for being mediocre until they trade him. But yes, it's not the whole $18 million.
It's not our $18 million. Who cares?
All right. Well, there we go. Okay. Episode 248 of the Jays from the Couch podcast in the books. I want to thank you both for tuning in. Jason, thank you for joining us for your first ever podcast. I hope we didn't scare you off, and I hope you'll do some more with us.
Thank you. And I hope I'm asked, and I really appreciate being asked. And it's been a hoop.
Absolutely. So let everybody know how they can follow you on Twitter and all that fun stuff.
I'm a new Twitterer. You can follow me at Twitter at J Mcdonald Jason. JMacDonald JASON.
There you go. So
Or
new Twitterer at Jays from the Couch, of course. New Twitterer. So for all of our listeners all out there, give Jason a follow on Twitter. Make him feel welcome like you do everybody. Steve, your turn. Thanks for joining me. Let everybody know how they can follow you, sir.
But generally, the easiest way is to find the angriest tweets. You'll eventually trace yourself back to at US of Jays. There's also a US of Jays Facebook page. And of course, I'll be back on Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern time on the YouTube channel to anger you more on the On-Fix.
And that's right. And for all of our listeners out there, don't forget Karen's Sunny Side of the Dome live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We've got our flagship podcast show Sundays, Steve's show on Tuesdays with the On-Fact Circle, and Karen's on Thursdays. We've got a week's worth of entertainment, Blue Jays talk, and fun coming at you every week. Don't forget, check us out at jaysfromthecouch.com. You can follow us on all the socials. Just look up Jays from the Couch. You'll find us everywhere. For our listeners, the audio version of this podcast can be found on Apple, Google, Spotify, everywhere you find a podcast. And, of course, we're streaming live on Sundays at 7 p.m. on our YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So head to our YouTube channel, Jays from the Couch, and give us a subscribe and all of that stuff. We would be forever in your debts, and we always pay our debts. So for Jason, for Steve, and for poor Ross Atkins, this is Sean Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at Doyle JFtC. Hoping life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle, and you don't miss it. Take care.